Free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris.
Ich bin ziemlich besorgt über das, was wir aus Washington da hören, insbesondere in den letzten Tagen. Allerdings glaube ich persönlich nicht, dass das
I'm quite concerned about what we're hearing from Washington, especially in the last few days. However, I personally do not believe that this is the last word. I'm also hearing very different voices from Congress. There are many Americans who are critical of the way their own government is going at the moment. In my view, it is crucial that we on the European side of the Atlantic have a common stance on the issues that need to be addressed. Let me give you an example. Trade policy is European and not national, and there will be no way to treat the member states of the European Union differently when it comes to customs duties, for example. Europe will have to speak with one voice, speak with one voice. The same applies to NATO. We will have a NATO summit in The Hague at the end of June. Is that normal? Is that where the NATO summit usually meets? Or is that supposed to be symbolic of saying fuck the US? By then, at the latest, it must be clear how the transatlantic relationship will develop. And by then, at the latest, it must also be clear what contribution Europe is prepared to make to defense within NATO. And I remain hopeful that the Americans will consider it in their own interests to be involved in Europe as well. That's where it usually is. And what we also see with the greatest concern, of course, is the attempt to strike a deal with Russia over the heads of the Europeans. Over the heads of Ukraine. That will come as no surprise to you when I say that. This is unacceptable both for Ukraine and for Europe. This really is the last warning sign to the political parties of the Democratic Center in Germany to find common solutions. I am determined to accept this task. I'm determined to hold constructive, good, speedy talks with the Social Democrats so that we are then in a position to form a government in Germany within the time frame I once mentioned, i.e., roughly by Easter. I repeat what I said last night. The world is not waiting for us. It is developing rapidly. Germany needs a government that is capable of acting, that has a parliamentary majority behind it, and that can end and overcome this current situation as quickly as possible. If those who really do not just make America first their motto, but also America alone, prevail, then it will be difficult. But I remain hopeful that we will succeed in maintaining the transatlantic relationship. As I said, it is in our mutual interest that if it is destroyed, it will not only be to the detriment of Europe, it will also be to the detriment of America. That's why I hope, and will do everything I can to preserve the good transatlantic relationship that I have come to know. But that presupposes that we are in agreement at the European level. I am convinced that NATO continues to function well. I have been in very close contact with Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and last weekend at the Security Conference in Munich, I had another intensive personal discussion with him. I believe that Mark Rutte has one of the most important functions in the transatlantic relationship anyway. I know that Mark Rutte and Donald Trump also have a very good personal relationship, and that's why I hope and also assume today that we have a chance to maintain the transatlantic relationship within NATO as well. We actually spoke on the phone last night. Benjamin Netanyahu called me, congratulated me. You know that we know each other very well. And I also told him that we should see each other soon after the government is formed. And in the event that he is planning a visit to Germany, I also promised him that we would find ways and means for him to visit Germany and leave again without being arrested in Germany. I think it is a completely absurd idea that an Israeli prime minister cannot visit the Federal Republic of Germany. He will be able to visit Germany. So I believe that's a reference to the fact that the ICC It's Rutte. The ICC has issued, I think, an arrest warrant for, was it for Gallant and for, Gallant was the Secretary of Defense, although he no longer is, or the Minister of Defense, and Benjamin Netanyahu. And as a member state to the ICC, Germany technically has an obligation to arrest Netanyahu if he's in their territory, and they have the ability to do so, but obviously they don't want to do that, so. Rutte. Would you be in favor of a country doing something like that? Ooh, that's a really rough one. The arrest warrant for Netanyahu is kind of wild. And I think the arrest warrant is wholly inappropriate, number one. But then number two, if you don't enforce it in ICC member states, you're undermining the International Criminal Court pretty significantly. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a rough one. Forcing to get spooked like never before.
I just want to see if he gets triggered by sound. That was decently scary.
Damn.
Bro, come watch it. Hey, yo, I'll let you tune in. Hold on. I need to open it. Yo, we're gonna open the stream. I'm gonna wait. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're dog shit. You are absolute trash. I held your hand. I put you in my backpack. I came for your dog shit.
Izzy was telling me that's real gold.
That is all real gold. Good news! You lit liquor. Oh. Yo. My dude. Thank you, man.
Well
the
deserved,
motherfucking key, bro.
Well deserved. You gonna pop it open?
Huh? Hold on for me real quick. Thank you. Oh my God, bro. About Fingerprint City is what I got.
Wow. Screens at the Department of Housing and Urban Development were displaying some interesting footage. Jesus Christ. What intern was this? Today, President Emmanuel Macron of France. Also, nobody linked me any interesting parts from this press conference. So, was it all bullshit? Fuck you guys. President Emmanuel Macron of France joined me in the Oval Office to speak to the G7 summit. The meeting was convened by Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, the current chair of G7, to acknowledge the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war, which would have never started if I was president. Good one. Everyone expressed their goal of seeing the war end, and I emphasized the importance of the vital critical minerals and rare earths deal between the United States and Ukraine, which we hope will be signed very soon. Seriously? So that's a real thing that he's pushing for? The paper that was slid across to, I don't think it was Zelensky, but it was like the ambassador or something, that we wanted 50% of their reserves or some bullshit. There's no way that's real, right? Holy shit, Trump is negotiating in ways that I didn't even imagine. I was thinking in Ukraine, Russia, if the United States were to negotiate, because Trump is such a horrible negotiator, that Ukraine would just be completely fucked and Russia would get everything they want and Ukraine would get nothing they want. I didn't even consider that Ukraine could even lose to third parties not involved in the war. Was it to Zelensky? I don't know if it was an ambassador or not. Like, what the fuck are they even getting in return for this? Where is all the great negotiating happening? Hello? This deal, which is an economic partnership, will ensure the American people recoup the tens of billions of dollars and military equipment sent to Ukraine. Oh, so now it's tens of billions? Because before he was saying 300 billion. But it was more than tens of billions. He just puts out like random numbers, I guess. while also helping Ukraine's economy grow as this brutal and savage war comes to an end. At the same time, I'm in serious discussions with President Vladimir Putin of Russia concerning the ending of the war and also major economic development transactions, which will take place between the United States and Russia. Talks are proceeding very well. Bilateral agreement establishing terms and conditions for a reconstruction investment fund. Okay. The government of the United States of America and the government of Ukraine intend to enter into this bilateral agreement establishing terms and conditions for a reconstruction investment fund to deepen the partnership between the U.S. of America and Ukraine, as set forth here, and the government of Ukraine and the United States of America, with the aim of achieving lasting peace in Ukraine, intend to establish a reconstruction investment fund in which the United States maintains 100% financial interest. Ukraine and the United States will equally co-manage the fund to advance the economic value associated with the resources of Ukraine, including but not limited to mineral resources, oil and gas resources, and infrastructure and ports until the fund is fully funded. The fund will be established to collect and reinvest the revenues minus actual operating expenses contributed to the fund during the period of defending, reconstructing, and returning Ukraine to its year-end 2021 gross domestic product figure. The fund will earn income from Ukrainian sources, including but not limited to deposits of minerals, hydrocarbons, and other extractable materials, any and all natural assets, and infrastructure and ports, as may be further described in the fund agreement. What the fuck? The government of Ukraine will contribute to the fund 50% of the revenue, minus actual operating expenses earned from Ukrainian sources, including but not limited to deposits of minerals, hydrocarbons, and other extractable materials, any and all natural assets and infrastructure and ports, as may be further described in the fund agreement. The fund agreement will provide that the contributions to the fund by the government of Ukraine will continue until the contributions reach the sum of $500 billion. The fund agreement will separately provide that the government of Ukraine will additionally contribute to the fund a sum equal to twice the amount that the United States provides to Ukraine after the date of this agreement. To that end, the government of the United States of America intends to provide a long-term financial commitment to the development of a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine. Such potential further contributions shall be detailed in the fund agreement and may be comprised of funds, financial instruments, tangible and intangible assets critical for the reconstruction of Ukraine. The fund's operating profit distribution mechanism will also be designed so as to invest in projects in Ukraine and attract investments to increase development, including but not limited to the extraction and processing of subsoil in Ukraine and the development of infrastructure and ports. The fund agreement will pay particular attention to the control mechanisms that make it impossible to weaken, violate, or circumvent sanctions and other restrictive measures. The text of the fund agreement will be developed without delay by working groups chaired by authorized representatives of Ukraine and the United States of America. So at the end of the day, what? It's the United States is investing a little bit of money into Ukraine, and then Ukraine has to pay the U.S. $500 billion, and then 2 times whatever we invest in them? Am I understanding this? Furious, Zelensky screamed at Trump's envoy for trying to make him sign a $500 billion mineral deal and was so loud he could be heard through the door and left the U.S. Treasury Secretary shaking. Jesus Christ. Lies. Pure propaganda. I was there. You can see the video. Besant is standing and talking calmly. I like how that's the part he needs to correct. This traitorous, treasonous fuck. Unbelievable. The fact that this guy was ever in the military should be enough to fucking... Ooh, video games.
President called Zelensky a dictator. Would you use the same words regarding Putin?
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens.
The president called Zelensky a dictator.
We watched this earlier in the stream, but just to rewatch it. Macron does what no U.S. journalist will ever fucking do.
I support the idea to have Ukraine because they are the one to have lose a lot of their fellow citizens and being destroyed by these attacks. Second, all of those who paid for could be compensated, but not by Ukraine, by Russia, because they were the one to aggress.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was.
Oh, I didn't even see that before. He reaches over and he guides him like a disobedient child. He puts his hand on him and says, "Excuse me, sir. Please shut the fuck up."
Is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear.
Okay.
We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan, because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia will have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me. But they get their money back, we don't, and now we do. But, you know, that's only fair.
We will fight to do something.
Next week, there's a key deadline for your Canada and Mexico tariff. I believe those countries have done enough on the border to stop those from taking effect. And for President Macron, I'm wondering if you believe that this critical minerals deal with Ukraine represents a de facto security guarantee by the United States, since the U.S. would have an interest in protecting those reserves in Ukraine. Thank you.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools.
The worst deal makers. These countries have been tariffing us and taking advantage of us for years, and it's not going to happen anymore.
It's because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago.
Really? Then why are we talking about tariffing Canada and Mexico when that was your deal that you did 4 years ago?
But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame
my own leadership for being so weak.
Our leadership for allowing it to happen.
No, we get it. Jesus. Richard, I like your tweets and your Substack, but you really need to become a Democrat. Now that the Zionism debates are over, there's no reason for you to remain in the low IQ party. Yeah, being smart and on the right is increasingly untenable. Do you see we're on track to have one of the biggest flu seasons in like the past couple decades? Based. Flu vaccine rates are like sunk like 10, 20, 30 points in certain demographics. Jesus, Steve Bannon. Why are they even polling on this shit right now? What the fuck? I guess it's for fun, but ugh. Good one.
I recently started watching. I want to ask you, what exactly did you say to Trump? Did you look him in the eyes and say it's the Jews?
Oh my gosh. You're just like mentally unwell. Or really, really dumb. Either way, we need some elite human capital. Richard Hanania, if you can hear us, please save us. Richard Hanania, if you can hear us. Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. The wages of low IQ anti-Semitism. These are the wages of low IQ anti-Semitism. I'm sorry. I didn't know. How could I know? Richard Hanania, please. Oh, have mercy. We need some elite human capital. What exactly did you say to Trump? Did you say it's the Jews? Oh, brother.
Trump sent $10. No message.
Thank you.
Nice.
Have you ever met Tucker?
We've talked a lot. If I ever meet him, I'll probably kill him.
Damn.
He's the worst person. Thank you.
Have you ever met Tucker?
If I ever meet him, I'll fucking kill him. Do you think it's just a cycle of Fuentes hating Jews openly, then putting the mask on? Well, no, but the issue is that when you rage bait with anti-Semitism, the people that you pick up, like anti-Semitic people are generally fucking retarded. So it's like he's probably just frustrated that his audience is kind of low IQ, you know? Fuentes snaps at his super chatters.
Orthodox Cypriot Grower % $5. Israel has ordered the seizure of the Armenian Orthodox Church in Jerusalem. Greatest ally.
Greatest ally? Not. Greatest ally, not. Yeah, right. Greatest ally. Wink. Yeah, good one, dude. Fuck
Just
off.
Sent $15. Thank you for blessing my Instagram Reels. My heart goes out to you.
What are you talking? Oh, yeah.
Foily sent $5. Be nice to the Rhodesian posters on Twitter. That was my first red pill out of libertarianism. No support from USA during Cold War.
Dude, shut up.
What chance do we have?
Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
You got these not so quick niggas punching air right now.
What are you talking? Oh, the salute, yeah.
Connor MC Grower % $5. You frequently mention that the American dream is dead because America no longer manufactures things.
Shut the fuck up! I hate these super chats that are like, you say this. Shut the fuck up.
Niggas for Nick sent $14. What are your thoughts on Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam?
Not a fan. He's a good speaker, though. He's super cool.
Beluga Grower % $15. Happy Thursday, big guy. Have a Big Mac on me. God bless.
Thank you. That's a good super chat.
Beluga Grower % $15. Basement sent $5. Yo.
Base Big Macs.
I stopped my discussion with President Putin after Bucha and the war crimes because I considered that, we had nothing to get from him in the time. Now this is a chance, there is a big change because there is a new US administration. So this is a new context. So there is good reason for President Trump to re-engage with President Putin. But my experience is the following, and I shared it with President Trump and the team. In 2014, our predecessors negotiated peace with President Putin. But because of the lack of guarantees, and especially security guarantees, President Putin violated this peace. And I had several discussions, especially beginning of 2022, several times, 7 hours with President Putin, 15 days before launching of the attack. He denied everything, but we didn't have security guarantees. So this is why being strong and having deterrence capacities is the only way to be sure it will be respected.
Oof.
And I insisted on that, and this is why I believe that the US has the capacity to do so. And this is why I think we should never say, I will never send any boots on the ground, because you give a blank check to violate any type of commitment. So I think it's good to have discussion. I think it's useful to have negotiation. I think it's super important to go to the peace. But my strong point was to say, let's try to get something first which can be assessed, checked and verified. And let's be sure that we build sufficient guarantees on the short run. And this is where we are ready to be engaged. As for France, a lot of my European colleagues are ready to be engaged. But we do need this American backup, because this is part of the credibility of the security guarantees. And this is our collective deterrence capacity. And I have the feeling that the president has this capacity.
I think it's
What was he going to say? I think he's right. Deterrence capacity would require the U.S. to actually do something, though, to hurt Russia if they violated. What's a quiet whistling noise every time he stops talking? If you smoke tobacco too much, and if you eat too many baguettes, then every time you're not talking, there's a strange sound that's emitted from your throat. And when Frenchmen are in the United States, they don't have access to a constant stream of cigars and yummy French bread, so that noise comes out. Just kidding. Okay. I don't know how much of this trial we're actually going to watch. Now I kind of want to just go through the whole I'm thinking I'm at Arbery, but not the Depp Heard case, but let's go through a little bit of this, I guess. We won't do any more of the preliminary shit because fuck that. Somebody link me like the start of this. How long is the actual whole trial? Ignoring any other bullshit. Where are my God tier linkers in chat? I wish there was a way to... Oh, actually there is. I have a message of the day. What's the point of doing this? The point of doing this is that there is a handful of cases that get brought up every single fucking time conservatives talk about shit. This is one that Temple brings up a lot. It's just nice to know the fucking facts of the case. That's why. Why are we going over this? The same question is going to be spammed 50 million fucking times today. I'm gonna use the restroom. Somebody get me the fucking playlist for this. Hold on. Ooh. Here you go, Lil Bub. Oh my god.
And what's difficult to see, but what you just saw, was Travis McMichael raising up
Day 1.
his shotgun.
Holy fuck. Oh my god. It's 3 people. Should be done with this shit before lunch.
That Remington 12 gauge. For absolutely no reason, because where's Mr. Arbery? Look how far Mr. Arbery is. Mr. Arbery's under attack. He's being driven forward by Mr. Bryan in his pickup truck. He's running away from this pickup truck that's already tried to hit him 4 times toward the McMichaels. Travis McMichael is out of the car with his shotgun.
Okay. Opening statements. Cringe. No one cares.
And all of the other instructions that I've provided you will apply. Thank you.
So rise for a jury, please.
So you've been watching our gavel-to-gavel coverage here of the Ahmaud Arbery murder trial. Hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Court taking a quick break now.
In through the voir dire process, by implication, the knowledge of the jurors about the unindicted.
Specific details.
If I may, President Biden, Dr. Biden, thank you very much for your attendance, particularly after the arduous trip.
Attention.
This has a whole bunch of extra shit in it. Somebody linked me the playlist, but when we looked at that channel before, it's such horrible audio. Does it get cleaned up for the trial, or?
And enter a plea on his behalf of not guilty to all 9 counts.
This is to Travis. And just empty 155.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Wait. Oh, wait, hold on 1 second.
All right. We are on. The defendants are present, represented by counsel. I have a panel available. The couple just housekeeping matters with the court. I indicated to counsel that I would address the panel on 2 questions that came through. I've gone ahead and done that. The court also last night sent generally the court's rulings on the state's
Sorry, the clicking is because somebody put a fork in the microwave.
motion in limine with regard to probation and the defendant's motion in limine with regard to the vanity plate. As indicated in that short email last night, the court is granting the state's motion in limine with regard to probation. I'll put a written order into the record so that it is in the record. And the court is denying the defense motion in limine with regard to the vanity plate. And again, we'll put a written order into the record. Those are the matters I believe I have open before the court. Anything from the state before we get started?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Anything from Travis McMichael?
Nothing from Travis.
From Greg McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
From Roddy Bryan?
Your Honor, we filed 2 motions earlier today.
Oh, I didn't even do anything. It fixed
We don't
itself.
want to waive those motions by not insisting on a hearing before trial, but as long
Just give me the jury instructions.
Concerned in the commission of. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been sworn and impaneled, and you're about to try a criminal case entitled The State of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William R. Bryan. The defendants have been charged, each individually and as parties concerned in the commission of a crime, by the grand jury of Glynn County in an indictment composed of the counts that I just read to you in the oath. To this indictment, the defendants have pled not guilty, and each denies every allegation therein. This is what forms the issue that you have been selected, sworn, and impaneled to try. Before we begin the trial, I'm going to give you some preliminary instructions on fundamental principles of criminal law. I will also instruct you on the role of the judge, the jury, and the lawyers, and give you an overview of the trial procedure. Many of you may have never served on a jury before. It is therefore necessary that these instructions be given so that you have a general understanding of the procedure in a criminal trial, what will be expected of you, and how you are to conduct yourself during the trial.
Thank you.
The defendants are charged in the indictment with crimes that are violations of certain laws of the state of Georgia. I want to emphasize to you that the indictment, including all of the counts therein, and the pleas of not guilty, are the legal procedures by which these criminal charges are brought against each defendant. The charges and the plea of not guilty are not evidence of guilt, and you should not consider them as evidence or implication of guilt of any crime whatsoever. The defendants are presumed innocent until each is proven guilty. Each defendant enters upon the trial of the case with a presumption of innocence in his favor, and this presumption remains with the defendant until it is overcome by the state with evidence that is sufficient to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of the crime or crimes charged. No person shall be convicted of any crime unless and until each element of the crime is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof rests upon the state to prove every material allegation of the indictment and every essential element of the crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. However, the state is not required to prove the guilt of the accused beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. A reasonable doubt means just what it says. It is a doubt of a fair-minded, impartial juror honestly seeking the truth. It is a doubt based upon common sense and reason. It does not mean a vague or arbitrary doubt, but it is a doubt for which a reason can be given, arising from a consideration of the evidence or lack of evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any consideration of the evidence or lack.
Oh, I thought this guy had like duct tape over his fucking mouth. What the fuck? It's a mask.
Lack of evidence, a conflict in the evidence, or any combination of these. There's no burden of proof upon the defendants whatsoever, and the burden never shifts to a defendant to prove his innocence. When a defense is raised by the evidence, the burden is on the state to negate or disprove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Though you may consider all of the evidence as a whole, conviction of one defendant does not necessarily require conviction of another. You, the jury, must determine whether the state has proven the guilt of each defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. If, after giving consideration to all of the facts and circumstances of this case, your minds are wavering, unsettled, or unsatisfied, then that is a doubt of the law, and you should acquit that defendant. But if no doubt exists in your minds about the guilt of the accused, then you would be authorized to convict that defendant. If the state fails to prove a defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it would be your duty to acquit.
Wouldn't it be crazy to split the overlay into fourths? I had that idea earlier, but nobody liked it. So something basically like this, but people didn't want the thing to be too small for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Now, under our system, it is my duty as the trial judge to determine the law that applies in this case and to instruct you, the jury, on the specific rules of law that you must apply to the facts in arriving at a verdict. I'm giving you some of those instructions now. I will give you more detailed instructions after the evidence has been presented and the lawyers have made their closing arguments. During the trial, I may be called upon to rule on motions or objections to evidence. Nothing I say in making these rulings or at any time during the trial is evidence, and it should not be considered as an indication that I have any leaning in this case whatsoever. My only interest in this case is to see that it is fairly tried, according to the laws and the Constitution of the state of Georgia and the Constitution of the United States. As expected, the lawyers serve as advocates to their clients and are duty-bound to represent their clients to the best of their ability. The lawyers also serve as officers of this court, and as such, they are bound to follow applicable laws, trial procedure, and rules of evidence during the trial. If at any time the lawyers believe that any law, procedure, or rule of evidence is being violated, they may make motions regarding the conduct of the trial or objections to the admission of evidence. In making these motions or objections, the lawyers are simply seeking to fulfill their duties to their clients and to the court. Now, sometimes these motions or objections may require the court to consider issues outside your presence. When this occurs, you will be excused to the jury room. We will try to minimize the number and length of these interruptions, and I do ask for your patience when this occurs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, trial procedure in a criminal trial is generally as follows.
In what case in what context is this case usually brought up? It's not ever brought up. I'm literally watching this because I just want to watch the guy die over and over again on stream. That's it, okay? That's the answer. And everybody asks you, say, Destiny likes listening about this guy dying over and over again, okay? That's the answer. Please, that's it, okay? Jesus.
First, the attorneys for both sides have the opportunity to make what is called an opening statement. This opening statement is not evidence. Remember that what the lawyers say is not evidence, but it is a preview or an outline of what they expect the evidence to be. Following the opening statements, evidence will be presented. Evidence can be in the form of testimony given by witnesses or physical evidence that will be labeled with exhibit numbers for identification. After the presentation of evidence, the attorneys have the opportunity to make what is called a closing argument. At this time, the attorneys may suggest which laws are applicable and how they should be considered in light of the evidence. Following closing arguments, I will charge you more specifically on the law that applies to this case. I will then ask you to retire to the jury room to deliberate and to reach a verdict. Now, the jury has a very important role. You must decide the facts of the case from the evidence presented, and then apply the law I give you to those facts. Now, evidence is the means by which a fact is established or disproved. Evidence can be either testimony or exhibits. Testimony is what you hear from people who take the witness stand and swear to tell the truth. Exhibits are documents, photographs, and other physical items that are admitted during the trial. Certain things are not evidence and must not be considered. For example, statements and arguments made by the lawyers are not evidence. In their opening statements and closing arguments, the lawyers will discuss the case and provide an overview. But again, their remarks are not evidence. Also, questions and objections made by the lawyers are not evidence. Only the witness's answers to questions are evidence. Now, I will admit or exclude evidence according to the rules. If a lawyer makes an objection and I overrule it, that means the evidence is admitted and you may consider it. On the other hand, if I sustain an objection, this means that the evidence is excluded from the trial and you may not consider it. You should consider only that testimony and only those exhibits that are admitted. You should not assume or infer anything about evidence which I have excluded. If you happen to hear or see evidence that I end up excluding from the trial, you should disregard it entirely in your deliberations and in arriving at your verdict.
Good one. Close.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you, the jury,
What state is this? Is in the state of Georgia.
must determine the credibility and believability of witnesses. It is for you to determine which witness or witnesses you will believe and which witness or witnesses you will not believe, if there are some whom you do not believe. In determining the credibility or believability of witnesses, you may consider all of the facts and circumstances of the case, the manner in which the witnesses testify, their interest or lack of interest in the case, their means and opportunity for knowing the facts about which they testify, the nature of the facts about which they testify, the probability or improbability of their testimony, and the occurrences about which they testify. You may also consider their personal credibility insofar as it may appear to you from the trial of the case. As the fact finder, it is your duty to believe the witnesses whom you think are most believable. It is for you alone to determine what testimony you will believe and what testimony you will not believe. Now, it is important that you pay close attention during this trial. If at any time you cannot hear or see the evidence, or if you are suffering from any discomfort that distracts you, please inform me or the bailiff, and we will do what is needed to make sure that you can hear and see the evidence and give it your undivided attention. If you need a break at any time, please raise your hand or alert one of the bailiffs, and I will recognize you. Now, you should consider the evidence with an open mind, and you should not reach any final conclusions until the trial is over. Do not jump to conclusions before all of the evidence has been presented. Remember that you are the ones who have been qualified as fair and impartial jurors.
What did Tim Pool say the judge said about the jury instructions? Oh, good question. What did he say? Was it on culture wars? One Gen Z. No, it was to me, right? When I was on that episode?
Arbery case. You know about the
We passed 146.
It's a felony. You're allowed to make a citizen's arrest without being a witness to the crime. The issue was it was an old law that was written in a simplistic way that had like a comma or something. And the jury instructions by the judge was you interpret how you see it. The prosecution argued, regardless of a felony or misdemeanor, you had to be a witness. And the defense argued, no.
I don't even know what he could possibly be referring to here. I don't even know if we'll ever, but I don't even know what that could possibly mean.
Deciding this case.
Maybe
no other influence should affect your decision. For that reason, you may not discuss this case with anyone, including family and friends, or let anyone discuss the case with you or around you. This includes discussing or sharing information by email, texting, blogging, or any form of social media until actual deliberations begin. That is, until after you have heard all of the evidence, the lawyer's closing arguments, and you have been fully charged on the law that applies to this case. You must not discuss this case even amongst yourselves in the jury room, during breaks, or anywhere else.
Damn.
Do not at any time during the trial request, accept, agree to accept, or discuss with any person any type of payment or benefit in return for supplying any information about the trial. You must promptly tell me about any incident you know of involving an attempt by any person to improperly contact or influence you or any other member of the jury. Now, I've asked the deputy, or the bailiff in this particular case, to provide you, I guess deputy, I got both words. So I've asked the deputy to provide you with pencils and notepads for your use during trial. You may take notes, but you are not required to do so. If you decide to take notes, please remember that note-taking should not divert you from paying full attention to the evidence and evaluating witnesses' credibility. Your observations of the witnesses during their testimony can be vital to your determination of the believability of their testimony. The notes that you take are for your use only, and they're not to be shared with anyone. Lost my notes here.
Uh-oh, he forgot. He forgore.
Not to be shared until you begin actual deliberations with your fellow jurors. Sorry about that. Now, notes are not evidence, only memory aids, and they should not take precedence over your recollection. It is the duty of each juror to recall the evidence, and while you may consider another juror's notes to refresh your memory, you should rely on your own recollection of the proceedings. Do not be influenced by the notes of other jurors unless their notes help you in determining your independent recollection. Notes are not entitled to any greater weight than the recollection or impression of each juror as to what the evidence may have been. During the trial, you must leave your notes in the jury room, except when you are in the courtroom. The notes will be destroyed at the end of deliberations. Please note that you will not get a transcript of any witness's testimony, so you must remember, in the way that works best for you, what was said on the witness stand. I instruct you, ladies and gentlemen, that you must decide this case for yourself solely on the testimony that you hear from the witness stand and the exhibits admitted into evidence. You must set aside anything you may have heard about this case prior to this trial. You may not visit any scenes depicted by the evidence. You may not utilize any books or documents not in evidence during your deliberations. You may not read or listen to any accounts of the trial that might appear in the news media. You may not discuss this case with anyone other than your fellow jurors during deliberations. Again, to maintain the integrity of the jury system, I remind you that you must decide this case based only on the evidence admitted during the trial and the law that I will provide to you. You may not conduct any research on your own about the case or about any people or places mentioned during the trial. You may not visit any places mentioned in the evidence. You may not refer to any books or documents that were not admitted during the trial. Also, you may not use dictionaries or other reference materials. You may not use Google or otherwise search the internet, websites,
Google.
or blogs. And you may not use any other electronic media to get information about this case. Nor should you use any of these sources to get information about legal terms or about the law. Finally, you may not read or listen to any accounts of this trial that might appear in the news media, whether online, in print, or on the radio. This includes your news feeds or any other way you may access coverage. It is important to understand that you cannot discuss the case with anyone unless and until you have returned a verdict and the case is at an end. Finally, to assist the jury during the course of the trial, I'm going to charge you on certain legal principles that may come up during the case.
Okay.
As mentioned, I will charge you further and more comprehensively on the law and legal principles that apply at the conclusion of the case.
Okay.
The following is only intended to provide a limited overview of a limited number of legal principles. You should not single out any one instruction, but must consider as a whole all of the instructions I have given you and will give you during deliberations.
Fuck, I didn't mean to make
Burglary in the first degree.
Okay.
A person commits burglary in the first degree when without authority and with the intent to commit a theft, that person enters or remains in the dwelling of someone else. A dwelling includes a house or in the intent to commit a theft, first degree, when without authority and with the intent to commit a theft, that person enters or remains in the dwelling of someone else. A dwelling includes a house or any building or structure that is intended to be used as a residence. A dwelling also includes any part of that house, building, or structure. It does not matter if the dwelling was occupied, unoccupied, or vacant when the alleged burglary happened, but you may consider...
Holy shit, Steve Carell, just a little bit. One of the things that Timmy says is that burglary is literally just if you pass through a house's property line, that's already burglary or whatever, so that's not true, right?
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my preliminary instructions.
Whoa.
House or any building or structure that is intended to be used as a residence. A dwelling also includes any part of that house, building, or structure. It does not matter if the dwelling was occupied, unoccupied, or vacant when the alleged burglary happened, but you may consider these factors in deciding if the dwelling was meant to be used as a residence. Burglary, intent to steal. The evidence does not have to show that an actual theft happened to prove a burglary. However, you must determine that there was an intent to steal. An intent to steal may be shown in many ways, arising from the facts and circumstances proved during the trial. You may infer an intent to steal where the evidence shows an unlawful entry without authority into the place of another, where items of some value are present or kept inside, and when there is no other apparent motive for entry. Whether or not you make such an inference is a matter solely for you, the jury, to determine. Criminal trespass. A person commits the offense of criminal trespass when that person knowingly and without authority, A, enters upon the land or premises of another person for an unlawful purpose, B, enters upon the land or premises of another person after receiving, prior to entry, notice from the owner, rightful occupant, or, upon proper identification, an authorized representative of the owner or rightful occupant that entry is forbidden, or C, remains upon the land or premises of another person after receiving notice from the owner, rightful occupant, or, upon proper identification, an authorized representative of the owner or rightful occupant to depart. Citizens' arrests. A private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. In general, the phrases "in his presence" and "within his immediate knowledge" are synonymous, and a crime is committed in one's presence if by the exercise of any of his senses he has knowledge of its commission. Bruton charge.
Wait, let me go there. Hold on.
Of its presence, if Arnold, the phrases "in his presence" and "within his immediate knowledge" are synonymous, and a crime is committed in one's presence if by the exercise of any of his senses he has knowledge of its commission.
Fuck, that's phrased so weirdly. So that means somebody else couldn't tell you, and then you could go out on that. That means you have to have directly observed it yourself, I'm guessing, right?
Bruton charge. Finally, as mentioned, this court is responsible for determining the admissibility of evidence. Sometimes audio and/or video recordings cannot be played for the jury based upon the rules that govern admissibility. You are not to make any inferences for or against either party when the law does not permit recordings to be played either in full or in part. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my preliminary instructions, and we are now ready for the lawyers to give their opening statements. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Judge, the state is ready.